just find a way. Just find a way to keep doing what you want to do. And so that's what drives me.
My inborn passion for myself and my country.
We are going to be trendsetters, we're going to be the trailblazers, we're going to change things.
Designed to be this woman who should at least make a difference in someone's life.
Education is very important in a society. It allows people to be open-minded, to be aware of the environment, and to question the status quo. Education allows communities to develop, to thrive, and do better. This is what Given Piri believes, and he is running an organization called the Piggy Bank Campaign that wants to ensure that children in low-income areas get quality education.
Given Piri is basically professionally an economist, a social entrepreneur, a civic leader, as well as a Yali Fellow, co-founder and director of Piggy Bank Campaign. Born and bred in Kitwe. Obviously, I did all my schooling on the Copper Belt. High school was at Kito Boys High School, and then I had to move to the Copper Belt University where I did my economics.
Given Piri grew up on the Copper Belt and is an economist by profession. But he grew up in a low-income home. This was the beginning of his passion for education.
Primary school was at a school called Nancy Primary School in Nkana East, but I used to stay in Ndeke village. That's where my parents are, so we had to move every morning. I had to move to the high income lands just to learn. At least I had the privilege to be in a private school then. Yeah, so that's where I did my primary school. Then I moved to Ndeke High School for my junior secondary. After that, I left for Kito Boys High School. That's where I completed my grade 12 certificate. Having been born from a low-income household and being able to access tertiary education through government scholarship enabled me to realize that there's a kid out there, somebody who's very poor but deserves education regardless of their background. So I understand from that perspective that background doesn't matter, but then all it takes for us to be equalized is just to be educated. So I believe education is a social equalizer, and that is why I position myself to a placement where all my contributions are just towards curbing the gap between the rich and the poor by increasing access to education. That is what I believe in.
From a very young age, Given realized that education is an equalizer and that where one comes from does not determine how far they will go in life. He teamed up with his friends at the Copperbelt University to start a campaign to help kids from underprivileged communities.
The initiative was started in 2015, born out of the same realization that we kids, by then we were third-year economic students at CBU. I and my friends, Mr. Monsa Chalo and Joshua Sinfokwe, thought and realized to say we still have some vulnerable kids out there who are staying out of school just because of tuition fees, just in the same state as we, because we realized that being at the university, we couldn't also pay those fees. We only managed to attend that education because government had put in what we're calling the bursaries. So we thought, how much more if we shared the monies that we get in terms of meal allowances when we get paid, we share with the kids out there, because we realized that the next ghetto to Riverside was Musonda compound, where we had community schools of kids paying about 150 kwacha a year. So we thought, this is money that we just spend on our bundles. So how much more if we just invested it in education? And from there, we had to start the story of the campaign.
Given started running the Piggy Bank Campaign with the aim of having more children attend school and have a good education. Through his work, he has been able to open up community schools in low-income areas to allow more children access education. He works with other young people from UNZA and CBU. But this project does not come without challenges.
First of all, I would like us to try and ground the problem itself of our involvement in charity initiatives. So let's look at the Piggy Bank campaign itself. The Piggy Bank campaign is a charity initiative aimed at reducing poverty by increasing access to education. access to quality education for the less privileged community school going pupils. So now let's ground the problem by trying to disintegrate what quality education is. So quality education, according to Universal Declaration's right of 1948, Article 26, will tell you that quality education can be proxied by good infrastructure, which means you need to have an adequate number of classroom blocks, you need to have a good learning environment. Also, it means you need to have qualified teachers, not only qualified teachers, but sufficiently qualified teachers in order to improve the teacher-pupil ratio. You need to have good teaching aids, good boards, so that you can be able to meet the goals of the curriculum. So, aside from that, you also need a curriculum that's proper enough, that focuses way beyond numeracy and literacy, but incapacitates and being able to activate the full potential of a kid when they're in school. So when you look at that, that is what we strive to make sure we offer to these community schools where we are. We have about 5 community schools, 6 actually now, community schools we're dealing with. 3 are on the Copper Belt, Iposukilo, Samaritan, as well as Vine Paradise Community School. And then in Lusaka, we have Gudu Community School where we are right now, as well as John Hart Community School in Chama. So now, aside from that, there's a problem. People are staying out of school. We have a heart-wrenching and wrenching number of school dropouts. So now, you ask yourself, what's causing that? Then you find that on top of the list is financial inability, lack of mentorship, poor infrastructure, and then even just drugs, early pregnancies, early marriages. So when you look at these challenges that the communities are facing, the Piggy Bank campaign has been set up in a way that it has 4 clusters that will counter all these problems I've just mentioned. So how we do it, we have the scholarship fund where we get to sponsor the kids of parents who are failing to pay their tuition fee. So you understand that the population itself, 3/4 of the population lives under the poverty datum line, which is like $1 a day. So it's only right that people fail to pay their tuition fees. So that's on top of the list. And then you have voluntary teaching. Voluntary teaching is basically to improve the teacher-pupil ratio. I'll give an example of a Gudu Community School, which only has 2 teachers against 250 kids. So you understand the quality of education is being compromised by those ratios, because those are bad ratios. So what we do, we have a chapter at the University of Zambia and the Copper Belt University. We send out the university students who are team members. They come at the schools every week to spend 2 hours, from 8 hours to 10 hours, to teach. So to improve the teacher-pupil ratio. Apart from the normal classes of trying to improve literacy or quantitative awareness, we also have ICT classes incorporated. We also have segments where we have to exploit people's talents. We have job shadowing activities. So we bring in that's where the voluntary teaching comes in, and that is why the model of the campaign is in such a way that the people that run it basically are students. So we have 3 chapters. At the Copper Belt University, there's 2 chapters, one in Ndola, medical doctors, and then we have the other one at the main campus, and then in Lusaka, we have one here at the University of Zambia. So these students are very important because we have another cluster called mentorship, so we pair these students to the pupils so that they can have a different exposure. Because one time when we had our voluntary teaching sessions at Samaritan Community School on the Copper Belt, we asked this kid, what do you want to become when you grow up? And this kid told us, I want to be a bus conductor. So from that, as bad as it might sound, we get to realize that it's the exposure that is prompting people to think in such a way. If we change their exposure and told them to say, no, look, you can aspire to be economists, you can be doctors, you can be lawyers, and bring in a different setup by picking the kids and taking them to the university and pairing them with these people who are in university pursuing different faculties, means we're exposing these kids to a different environment, and that is what we want to have, ghetto homemade doctors. So the other frontier moving on is mentorship, like I said. So there's mentorship, there's voluntary teaching, the scholarship fund, and lastly, we have the material frontier. Here, we just get to donate books, we donate blackboards, we just try to meet the demands of the school at that particular time. Say if this school has a problem and they don't have water, we get to connect them to the grid. If they do not have power but have a sustainable way of paying for that power, we connect them to the power grid. Aside from that, we get to construct classroom blocks for schools that do not have sufficient classroom blocks, just like we did a year ago, where we had to commission and give out 3 classroom blocks at Samaritan, at Iposkilo Community School in Kitwe at the Copper Belt.
Other than providing all these education opportunities through the Piggy Bank project, Given has created a financial assistant program by giving books, building classrooms, and providing mentorship.
You realize that when we started out, I was a student, but then I'm no longer a student. And then we had members then, which was like 4 years ago. So all those people, we still have them. So which means the campaign is a hybrid of people who are working and people who are students. Because you realize there's some activities that require people who are working, especially when it comes to scholarship fund where we're sponsoring. Because as it stands right now, we have over 100 kids across the target schools that we're sponsoring. So people who are working find it easy to do that because they go extra. Some of them even go as far as paying, buying their uniforms, books, one-to-one visits, clothes. Yes, so it's a hybrid. But remember, students are very important. We need to help them realize civic duty as well. And on the other end, they're the ones who are doing these teaching sessions, 3/4 of them. But this is open to everyone. I think the only thing that you need is to identify with our sentiments to say communities out there have problems and you are the change that you want to see. So if you have the heart to come through and volunteer in any way, is it teaching? Because this is not about the money only. Because the thing is, I realize when you look at the name itself, sometimes people think about money only when you say the Piggy Bank campaign. But then the model around it is that, okay, let's look at it from the same money perspective first of all. If you had a 1 kwacha today, you wouldn't do anything much with it. But if you kept your 1 kwacha for 50 days, you'll be able to pay for a term tuition fees for a kid. So which means after putting your resources together, you're able to do something substantial. Now look at it from this perspective. This is not about the pocket change only. Yes, your change can change lives, but this change is not pocket change. Look at it from a point of view where we bring in different resources, different skills. It's a hybrid. We have people from the School of Medicine or people from education. When they come through, they bring in their skills. We piggy bank their skills. We put them together. We put even their coins together on top of it. That's when we're able to create the meaningful change we would like to see. So it's just an idea where we pull different resources together, be it skills, be it money, together to make something substantial. Because when you're alone, you can only do so much. So that is the whole concept behind the name Piggy Bank campaign.
This campaign started out when Given was a student. Now he has opened it up to allow other people to volunteer and lend a hand through helping in any way possible.
I'm very privileged to represent them. I am only a director, which means the actual work itself is done by a lot of people. We have a very good team. At the University of Zambia, we have an executive with a chairperson, which means they run their show. And then every other activity that's done in Lusaka is reported to me. But we have the other co-founder, Mr. Monsachalo, who looks after all the works in the Copper Belt, which means Ndola as well as Kitwe. But all those have their own structures. Students, chairperson, their own executive, they run the show, and we never even deprive them of any ingenuity. This is just a platform where people can express themselves. We also want to train the very youths that come to the campaign. We want them to learn about community service. We want them to learn about leadership. So it's a chance for them to exhibit leadership. If you ever felt like there was no platform where you're able to express yourself in terms of giving back to the community, the campaign is basically that platform for you. It's for everyone. It can never be a one-man show. I don't think I'm able to run everything on my own. There are times when we're not even in the country. Like as I speak right now, The other director is outside of the country on some training out there for civic leadership and entrepreneurship. But it's running. Doesn't mean the Cape Belt University is not doing anything. I'm just coming back from South Africa from a yearly training, Young African Leaders Training, community service as well, and the activities keep on running every week. That just gets to show that this is not a one-man show, and it is not something that's subjective to one person, but it is just a bunch of youths out there with one common goal who are able to execute things and just supplement government's efforts.
They say there is power in numbers, and people can do much more together. Given is working with other youths to ensure the Piggy Bank campaign achieves its goals. In the next 5 years, the Piggy Bank campaign hopes to increase its beneficiaries to 3,000 and be present all over the country.
All right, we intend to grow our campaign in all frontiers. As it stands right now, we have over 100 kids who are sponsoring. We wish in the next 5 years we could reach at least to 3,000 kids that are sponsoring. Secondly, we would like to establish at least more chapters to cover ground in our country, because this is a national project, and we believe youths, if you look at the population itself, 60% of the population of our country is youthful, and this is a youthful campaign, so which means we're trying to reach the youths out there as much as we can. So we are hoping we can establish independent chapters at every university and college in the country. So far, we have 3 chapters. That is a vision in terms of our expansion. We also wish to construct at least 3 more 1x3 classroom blocks for the community schools we're working with. We just want people and the government out there, to national leaders, to look up to youth-led change and say, okay, some of these schools have been built by youths who are passionate enough to supplement our efforts. And in terms of mentorship, we would like to mentor at least over 3,000 kids by the time it is 5 years. As it stands right now, we've only done about 500 who are under our mentorship project. So our mentorship project is growing because it's now split up to boy-child mentorship and girl-child mentorship. We realize these people need a safe space to discuss certain issues that only affect a single sex. Yes, so in terms of expansion and our vision, I think basically those are the main things we would like to do in the coming years.
Given is driven by the environment around him and his own experience in life.
What drives me, for me, it's the environment around me and what I've gone through. So when I look at the environment around me, even right now, I see things that are supposed to be changed. I see a kid somewhere who's supposed to be at par with a kid in Sebo Road. Remember, this is Lusaka. You have Sebo Road in Kablonga, you have Kalingalinga on the other side. But the truth of the matter is that parity only comes when all these people are educated. And that is where my passion lies. It gravitates around the education sector to keep the gap between the rich and the poor by increasing access to education. So what drives me is, so long as our community is having these problems where people do not have a focus of staying educated, then there's work for me. That is just how, and I have seen it from my own life. I was simply a boy coming from a very humble background and unknown places if you compare to these places I just mentioned, like Sebo Road. But as it stands right now, I am an economist and I'm able to rub shoulders with people who I couldn't even imagine. So it just shows that education can really reach you to levels you couldn't even have thought of. Yeah. So that's what drives me, because I've seen the change in my life. I believe I can share the very change to the other kids out there.
Other than running the Piggy Bank campaign, Given runs a photography business, but also volunteers with other projects that have similar goals and vision as his.
I have, because at the end of the day, you don't just want to be working. On the other side of life is investment banking. That is like what I do on a professional basis. But then, well, I also have my own businesses that I run. I have a media house called Elite 7 Photography. So basically, we're doing outdoor photography, on outdoor photography for different events, marriages, kitchen parties and whatnot. On the other side, I also spend time volunteering my time with other organizations because I believe you're supposed to be learning. You can't be an island. So I volunteer with the book bash. They are dealing with literacy, improving literacies around communities. So I volunteer with them when I have time. I go out there and have some wonderful reading sessions. I volunteer as well with my dream projects. These are also dealing with, they have like 3 clusters that are dealing with improving literacy as well, bringing about the reading culture, and we also partner in terms of volunteering, in terms of sponsoring of kids. So that is basically my other life besides the charity works.
And how do you balance working for photography and your charity works?
I think it's a matter of leveraging on partnerships. I have a very good friend of mine who's running who's doing the actual shooting, because I do not really even have the skills to shoot. But then I have the management skills, I bring the business. Yes, so I leverage on partnerships. So with him, he does the other side, I do my part. And then even when it comes to charity initiatives, in times that I'm not around, definitely the team is still around. I have made everything I do in such a way that it doesn't necessarily have to be me doing it, that bringing people around. I believe in togetherness.
Given believes that for one to contribute to national development, one must begin right where they are. He believes that each and every person has an opportunity to create the change they want to see.
And I think my word out there to that person that wants to create change is to basically begin from where they are, just get to start out. I think courage is not the absence of fear, but basically it is taking a step even when you have the fear. So I encourage them to be bold and just take a step and start wherever they are. Do not wait for the donors to come through before you could execute something, because I believe even where you are, there's still something that you can do that doesn't even require the amount of money you think of to start a project. So start where you are with what you have. In conclusion, I would say Africa as a continent, Zambia as a country, the future of our country highly depends on how well educated our population is, and therefore we should strive by all means to make sure that we get the less privileged kids that need education aboard and just be able to access quality education. And also in terms of community schools, I would also urge that those people that are in charge of ensuring standards of learning also take time to visit these schools and make sure what is being taught is up to standard, because we do not want to have a status where community schools are a low grade or a low standard education giver. We want them to be at par and be able to move along with the SDG number 4, which is quality education. Therefore, I implore that standards be equalized in all these community schools as good as government schools, even as private schools.
Just find a way. Just find a way to keep doing what you want to do. And so that's what drives me.
My inborn passion for myself and my country.